Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Miso. Taking another fun and random episode here guys this weekend because just yesterday, Jotego and his team released a beta core for Parodius on MiSTer FPGA. And just so you know, it works on single RAM builds. I know that I get a lot of questions about what RAM you need. You should be fine with pretty much any build under the sun. But we do a lot of update videos on the Nintendo 64 and Sega Saturn core, so I figured we'd give the arcade a chance to shine on its own independent core. And right off the top, this is definitely an amazing experience. This is marked as beta, and there is going to be a little bit of glitchiness in the sprites here and there, but if you don't notice it, you'd be hard-pressed to tell that this was not running on real arcade hardware. And I'm sure most of you have at least played Parodius somewhere, whether it's the PC Engine version or otherwise. It is an absolute ton of fun, and an amazing, legendarily good game to get on MiSTer FPGA. And Jotego has been teasing this for about the last week or week and a half, showing different versions of it running in the background with some definite sprite issues, because this is basically very similar hardware to the Simpsons Arcade, but I'll get into what the hardware changes are and what other games this could bring to MiSTer FPGA later on in the video. But right now you're watching the MiSTer version run on the beta core, and what we're going to do in just a moment is hop over to MAME emulation as well, so you can see just how incredibly close these two things are. This sunrise here, now that we move over to the main version, I cannot distinguish anything whatsoever between these two. And I'm using MAME as a comparison because I've long considered, and I think everyone else would too, the MAME emulation of this game is basically 100% arcade perfect. And that's the fun part. I want to do this more as a kind of A-B preview test of what the beta core is doing versus what has been available, because it's not like there's not options when it comes to playing Parodius. But as we move further into the game, if for some strange reason you've never played this game before, you definitely owe it to yourself to do so. It's one of the most fun, charming, weird, and just absolute out there Konami shmups of all time. This is one of my favorite games in the shmup genre, not just from Konami, but in general, that is not a bullet hell shmup. And everything just seems to look good here. There are some sprite issues, but I am hard-pressed to even locate them, and that is because in a shmup, you're less worried about what you're actually looking at as far as the art's concerned, and more concerned about the bullets that are coming towards you. So honestly, this is the type of experience where you're going to benefit from not paying attention to the graphics. Not only are you going to not notice the slight graphical glitches here and there, but you're going to stay alive a lot longer in the game as well. And trust me, you do not want to die. You go back to your base power, and it's going to hurt if you take a death in this game like we just did right here. A big thanks to Andy D for helping with some of the captures for this video as well. I do appreciate it. But you'll see here what core we're even in. You would not be able to tell if I didn't tell you right now. This is MAME, not MiSTer FPGA, and we're now moving back over to MiSTer FPGA. These are indistinguishable, and at one point in time I'm going to give you a test, and I want you to tell me whether or not we're watching the MiSTer FPGA version or the MAME version, which has existed for a very, very long time. And this is probably the best beta core I've seen Jotego put out. Not that his other beta cores are not fun and awesome in their own right, but you can usually pretty much tell where the graphical glitches are there. Where here, I don't think you're actually going to be able to notice them. If you don't pause the video and pixel peep the ever-loving hell of it, I don't think you'd ever know that there were any issues here whatsoever. And that is just absolutely outstanding. For a beta, this is like 98% of the way there, and I can't wait to see what the full public version brings to us. And don't forget, because this is a Jotego beta, you do need to be a Patreon member. I'm sure this will come to the public releases maybe 1 or 2 months from here. But right now, we're fighting this gigantic cat pirate ship, and we're very shortly going to move over to the MAME capture as well. So pay attention to all the graphics, all of the art, everything animating, and then compare it against the exact same portion that you're going to see in just a moment. And you're going to see, again, if I didn't tell you that this was MAME, you might not have any idea whatsoever. There seems to be maybe a slight 1 to 2% color shift, but otherwise, again, outside of the gameplay being slightly different because it's on a different platform in a different session, you really would not be able to tell anything whatsoever that this was a beta on MiSTer FPGA. As we move back over to the FPGA source again, it is just absolutely so good, and I can't wait to see what else Jotego gets from this core. We'll go over that in a few minutes of what other games could be coming to MiSTer FPGA based upon the implementation of this particular Konami board on the system, because Konami love to do one thing: recycle hardware in a new iteration, change one thing, and then release a bunch of games for it. But I will say the audio quality is outstanding for a beta as well, so I'm going to give you a sample of the MiSTer FPGA, come back, and then let you listen to MAME. But enjoy. Sounds extremely good, and a lot of times in beta cores the audio can be off, but here it just seems to be exactly the soundtrack and sound effects of Parodius style that I know, love, and remember. But go ahead and listen to the exact same section in MAME and tell me if you can hear any difference whatsoever. Honestly, to my ear, they sound exactly the same, but the reason I'm showing you The Simpsons right now is I want to talk about the overall development process of stuff like this and just what Konami did with their arcade hardware, because I own more Konami arcade boards than any one human being should be allowed to own. I may have more of Konami's original arcade boards at this point in time than Konami has in their warehouse somewhere in Japan. Now this is based on the TMNT2 arcade hardware, which is very, very similar to the Simpsons arcade board. Konami had a habit back in the day of basically recycling almost all of their hardware, making a new platform, putting on one new chip or one enhanced chip, and calling it a day. So that makes perfect sense that this is running on the Simpsons core, and it has some additional framework on top. But look at the games that this could be bringing to MiSTer. Obviously we have Parodius, but there's so many other fun games on this board. Some games you never heard of, and some games you definitely have, like Sunset Riders, and I can't wait to see if that comes to MiSTer FPGA. But honestly, TMNT, Turtles in Time, if that comes here soon, I'm going to be a very, very happy MiSTer fan. As we move back over to the boss fight on MiSTer FPGA, it's not surprising at all that this is how this works. Konami loved recycling old hardware back in the day, and this board versus the Simpsons board has a difference in some of these sprite chips, and there's some features that could have been hooked up but were not done on the board in and of itself, which is an odd move, but classic Konami, because even in their arcade hardware in the 3D realm, every new board is like 75% of the same hardware from the previous board with slight changes, so I'm not at all surprised to see that here on MiSTer FPGA. But what I'm going to do now is put a side-by-side up in just a moment, MiSTer FPGA as well as MAME on the same screen. So go ahead and tell me if you can see any differences outside of the actual gameplay aspect. What we have is MiSTer on the left and MAME on the right, and you'll see here when the boss is defeated and when he falls into the water, just watch the timing of the animations and watch the timing of the basic fade out to black. It took a little bit to time those up, but you'll see here we get the exact same animations at the exact same time across MAME, which has had years of a head start emulating this game perfectly to what Jotego and his team have done on MiSTer FPGA. It is outstanding the work he has put into this, and I can't wait to see what else comes of it, because honestly these sources side by side are near to identical, and one has definitely been around a lot longer. And that's not to knock MAME, I play Parodius on it pretty much once a year. But here is your test. Here's the intro to Parodius Da. You tell me, is this MiSTer FPGA or is this MAME? I'd be curious to know if anybody could tell any difference whatsoever. I had to literally label this shot with a title on the left-hand side of the screen to make sure I didn't forget, and I've now removed that during the voiceover because that's how incredibly close they are. But if you want to play Parodius Da today, just make sure you run Update All and make sure you're a Patreon beta member for Jotego and you'll be good to go. But this is one of those classic shmups, one of the best of all time in my opinion. It's here on MiSTer FPGA today, so go play it. Bye bye.